My name is Ingrid Fairbanks Webb. I'm 34 years old. 4 years ago, on the night before Mother's Day, I discovered something that shattered my understanding of family. I had been erased. Not slowly, not quietly. Completely. Removed from the Fairbanks family WhatsApp group like someone who had never existed. Like a stranger who accidentally wandered into the wrong conversation. My cousin Rachel called me just before midnight. Her voice trembled when she spoke. Ingrid, I need to tell you something. I didn't know if I should, but you deserve to know. I asked her what was wrong. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she said 3 words. Check your WhatsApp. When I opened the app, the group chat titled Fairbanks Family Dinner was gone. At first, I thought it was a technical glitch. Then Rachel sent me screenshots. The message my mother had posted earlier that evening glowed on my screen like a headline announcing a death. All my children will be there tomorrow. All my successful children. Ingrid chose to be a lowly teacher. I no longer see her as my daughter. Please don't mention her name. I stared at those words until the letters blurred. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't call my mother demanding an explanation. Instead, I did something unexpected. I disappeared. Exactly the way she wanted. What my mother didn't know was that 4 years later, I would stand on a stage in front of 500 educators while the governor of Virginia shook my hand. And she would be sitting in the audience. Uninvited. Waiting for a moment that would never come. But to understand how that moment happened, you need to understand what my family was like long before that message was sent. Because the night I was erased didn't begin with a text. It began with expectations. Growing up, the Fairbanks family looked perfect from the outside. We lived in a quiet suburb in Virginia where every house had manicured lawns and white fences that always needed repainting. My mother, Margaret Fairbanks, built her identity around appearances. She retired early from her job as a regional bank manager, not because she needed to rest, but because she had finally secured membership at the Westbrook Country Club. That membership cost more than my annual salary as a teacher. But to my mother, it was proof she had made it. She wore her maize scarves draped carefully across her shoulders, always in neutral tones that suggested quiet wealth. Every movement she made felt deliberate, like a performance she had rehearsed for decades. My older sister Victoria was her masterpiece. Victoria was 38 and worked as a plastic surgeon in Richmond. Her patients included local news anchors and the wives of state politicians. She posted pictures online of champagne dinners and charity galas where her Rolex watch appeared casually placed beside crystal glasses. At family gatherings, she spoke about cosmetic procedures with the tone of someone discussing art. Then there was my brother Bradley. 40 years old. Corporate lawyer in Washington, D.C. Bradley drove a Mercedes G-Wagon that he always parked where everyone could see it. His wife Carolyn collected designer handbags the way some people collect stamps. Rare ones. Expensive ones. The kind displayed in glass cabinets. And finally there was me. The youngest child. The one who didn't fit. I was a 4th-grade teacher at Maple Creek Elementary, a small school surrounded by farmland about 90 miles from my mother's pristine house. My car was a 12-year-old Honda Civic. My apartment could have fit inside Victoria's walk-in closet. At family gatherings, my career was mentioned with the same polite tone people use when discussing a distant hobby. Something quaint. Something small. What people never realized was this. I hadn't become a teacher because I lacked ambition. I had chosen it. When I graduated high school, I had a 4.1 GPA and a full scholarship offer to study pre-medicine at the University of Virginia. The exact path my sister had taken. My mother was ecstatic. She had already told her friends at the country club that both daughters would be doctors. But that summer, I volunteered at a literacy camp for children in our county. There was one boy named Marcus Jr. He was 8 years old and couldn't read beyond a first grade level. Teachers had labeled him slow. By August, he was reading chapter books. The day he finished Charlotte's Web, he ran across the classroom and hugged me so tightly I thought my ribs would crack. That moment changed everything. That night I called my mother. I'm not going to medical school, I told her. I'm going to study education. The silence lasted 17 seconds. I counted. You're throwing your life away, she said finally. For what? A government salary? She didn't attend my college graduation. She said she had a scheduling conflict. Later I learned that conflict was a garden party at the country club. Victoria mailed a card with $50 inside. Her note read, "Good luck with your little career." I cashed the check. I needed groceries. But I never forgot what it meant. The rejection didn't happen overnight. It crept in slowly. Thanksgiving dinners where my seat moved further from the main table. Christmas gifts that felt like obligations rather than affection. Small humiliations that piled up quietly. One Thanksgiving I arrived with my grandmother's sweet potato casserole. My mother smiled brightly and gestured toward a folding table in the corner. Oh, honey, we ran out of space at the main table. The folding table was where the children sat. I was 30 years old. Christmas was worse. I spent 3 weeks knitting my mother a cashmere scarf in her favorite shade of gray. When she opened it, she smiled thinly. How handmade. Then she spent 20 minutes admiring the Chanel clutch Victoria had bought her. 2 months later, I found my scarf still wrapped in tissue paper in the coat closet. Unused. Forgotten. But the moment that truly broke something inside me happened on my mother's birthday. I called to ask where dinner would be. The restaurant only had 6 seats, she explained sweetly. Your father, Victoria, Bradley, and their spouses. I waited for her to say my name. She didn't. You understand, she added. Family comes first. 6 seats. And somehow I didn't count as family. Still, nothing prepared me for the message I read on my phone that night before Mother's Day. Rachel had done the right thing by sending the screenshots. But seeing them felt like looking at proof of my own disappearance. I read that message 47 times. Not because I didn't understand it. Because part of me kept searching for a different meaning. There wasn't one. My mother had officially erased me. And everyone else had agreed. Victoria responded with a heart emoji. Bradley replied. Understood. 2 words. That was my brother's response to losing a sister. I stayed awake until 2 in the morning staring at the screen. Finally, I created a folder on my phone. I titled it, Proof. Inside IT I saved every screenshot Rachel sent. Then I made a decision. If my mother wanted me gone, I would disappear completely. But I would not forget. Because some receipts are meant to be kept forever. The next morning, for the first time in my life, I did not send my mother flowers for Mother's Day. I didn't call. I didn't drive 90 miles to pretend everything was fine. Instead, I made coffee, graded my students' assignments, and took a long walk along the creek behind my apartment. While I walked, I thought about what my life might look like without my family in it. I didn't realize then that losing them would eventually lead me to the family I was always meant to find. Because 2 years after that message, a field trip to a small organic farm would introduce me to someone who would change everything. And the life I built after that moment would become something my mother never imagined. The morning after my mother erased me from the family group chat, I woke up to something unfamiliar. Silence. No messages. No awkward attempts to explain what had happened. No calls pretending the message had been misunderstood. For the first time in years, there was nothing from my family at all. And strangely, that silence felt cleaner than the years of quiet humiliation that came before it. I brewed coffee in my small apartment kitchen and sat by the window, watching sunlight spread across the creek behind the building. For the first time in a long time, I asked myself a simple question. What does my life look like without them? At first, the answer was terrifying. My family had always been the background of my life, even if I had never quite belonged in the picture. But slowly, something else began to happen. Without them, I also no longer had to prove anything. I could simply live. 6 months passed. My life became quieter, but it also became clearer. I focused on teaching. My 4th grade classroom at Maple Creek Elementary was chaotic in the way classrooms often are. Pencils rolling off desks, laughter echoing down the hallway, the occasional paper airplane sailing across the room when students thought I wasn't looking. But I loved it. Teaching wasn't glamorous. It wasn't prestigious. But it mattered. Every time a child finally understood something they had struggled with for weeks, I felt the same quiet satisfaction I had felt that summer with Marcus Jr. at the literacy camp. Those moments reminded me that meaning doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it arrives quietly, disguised as a child raising their hand and saying, "I think I get it now." Occasionally, Rachel still called to give me updates about the family I had left behind. "Your mom told people you're doing volunteer work in Africa," she said one evening. I nearly choked on my tea. She said, "What?" "Apparently you're working with some international education charity. She told everyone at the country club that you're changing lives overseas." I stared at the wall for a moment, letting the irony sink in. My mother hadn't admitted she had disowned me. Instead, she had created a better version of the story. In her version, I was heroic, prestigious, impressive, just conveniently unavailable. It was easier for her to imagine me as a humanitarian abroad than to admit she had rejected her own daughter for being a teacher. And that realization taught me something important. My mother didn't hate me. She hated what I represented. I was the part of her life that didn't fit the image she wanted to present. So she erased me. The next turning point in my life happened during a field trip. It was a crisp October morning when I loaded 22 4th graders onto a school bus bound for a local organic farm. The farm was called Webb Family Organics, a place known throughout the county for its orchards and pumpkin fields. Families visited every fall to pick apples and take photos beside the red barn. The owner met us when we arrived. "Miss Fairbanks?" he asked, extending his hand. His name was Marcus Webb. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of calm presence that made people feel comfortable immediately. His flannel shirt had a faint smell of earth and hay, the scent of someone who actually worked outdoors. "You must be the teacher Lily talks about," he said with a warm smile. Lily was his daughter. 5 years old. Golden curls and a shy smile. She was in the kindergarten class down the hallway from mine, and I had started tutoring her twice a week after school. Her mother had passed away from cancer the year before. "She's an incredible kid," I said. Marcus's expression softened when I said that. "Thank you," he replied quietly. "That means more than you know." That field trip led to a phone call. The phone call led to coffee. Coffee eventually led to a quiet picnic beneath an enormous oak tree on the edge of Marcus's property. It was there, sitting in the grass while Lily chased butterflies nearby, that Marcus asked about my family. I told him the truth. "They decided I wasn't part of it anymore," I said simply. He didn't interrupt. He didn't try to fix the story or offer advice. Instead, he handed me a slice of homemade apple pie. "Family isn't always blood," he said. "Sometimes it's the people who stay when everyone else leaves." It was such a simple sentence. But hearing it felt like someone unlocking a door I had been standing outside of for years. Over the next 2 years, my life changed in ways I never expected. Marcus and I grew closer. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Just steadily. Like something strong being built one careful piece at a time. Lily became a constant presence in my life. She would sit beside me while I graded papers, asking endless questions about everything from math homework to why clouds change shape. Eventually, she started calling me something that made my heart ache the first time I heard it. Miss Ingrid. Then one day it became simply, Mom. In 2022, Marcus and I got married beneath the same oak tree where we had shared that first picnic. The ceremony was small. Just a few close friends. Lily scattered flower petals across the grass as our flower girl. It wasn't glamorous. There were no crystal chandeliers or elaborate decorations. But it was honest. And for the first time in my life, I felt something I had never felt in my mother's house. I felt like I belonged. Later that year, I officially adopted Lily. The day the paperwork became final, she handed me a drawing she had made with crayons. 3 stick figures stood beneath a bright yellow sun. She had written 3 words underneath in careful kindergarten handwriting. My mom, my dad, me. I kept that drawing in my desk at school. Whenever I had a difficult day, I looked at it and remembered exactly what mattered. During those years, I also continued working toward my master's degree in educational leadership. I studied at night after Lily fell asleep. I wrote research papers during lunch breaks. It wasn't easy. But eventually the work paid off. When the assistant principal position opened at Maple Creek Elementary, I applied. And I got it. From there, my career continued growing. But through all of it, I stayed invisible. No social media. No announcements. No attempt to reconnect with the family that had erased me. They had no idea who I had become. And I wasn't ready to tell them. Not yet. Then one afternoon in March 2024, my phone rang while I was sitting at my desk. The voice on the other end introduced herself as a representative from the Virginia Department of Education. "Mrs. Fairbanks Webb," she said, "the board has reviewed your application." My heart began beating faster. "We're pleased to inform you that you have been selected as the new superintendent of schools for Clark County." For a moment I couldn't speak. Superintendent. 12 schools. 4,000 students. 200 teachers. The position was one I had applied for almost on impulse, never believing I would actually receive it. But somehow, through years of work and dedication, I had built a career strong enough to earn it. 2 weeks later, the announcement appeared in the local newspaper. A small headline. A photo from the school district website. Nothing dramatic. Just a quiet recognition of a career built slowly over time. I assumed my family would never see it. I was wrong. That evening Rachel called. "Ingrid," she said breathlessly, "your sister just posted the article in the family group chat." My stomach tightened. "What did Mom say?" Rachel hesitated. "She hasn't replied yet." "But I heard her call Victoria right after she saw it." "What did she say?" Rachel's voice dropped. "She's furious." "Not because you succeeded," Rachel added. "Because she's been telling everyone for 4 years that you're in Africa." The truth had just destroyed her story. And suddenly, after 4 years of silence, my family wanted to talk again. But the reason they wanted me back had nothing to do with love. It had everything to do with reputation. And what they planned to do next would prove that completely. The first message from my mother arrived 3 days after the newspaper published the announcement about my new position. It came as an email. The subject line simply read, "From your mother." For a long time I stared at it without opening it. 4 years of silence sat between us. 4 years since the night she told my siblings I was no longer her daughter. And now suddenly she wanted to talk. Eventually curiosity won. I opened the message. "My dearest Ingrid," it began. "I saw the wonderful news about your promotion. I always knew you had great potential." I paused. Already the words felt strange. My mother had spent years treating my career like an embarrassment. Now she was suddenly proud of it. The email continued. "We should meet for lunch soon. I would love to hear about everything you've accomplished." Then came the final line. "Mother's Day is approaching. It would mean so much to have the whole family together again." I read the message twice. Then a third time. Not once did she mention the message she had written 4 years earlier. Not once did she apologize. There was no acknowledgement of the night she told everyone I was no longer part of the family. It was as if those 4 years had simply vanished. As if I had been away on a long vacation. And now she expected me to return. I closed the email and said nothing. On. Terecht, Guru. 2 weeks passed. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. Normally I would have ignored it. But something told me exactly who it was. I answered. "Hello?" Ingrid, it's Victoria. My sister's voice sounded warm. Too warm. The kind of warmth people use when they are trying to repair something they broke. I know it's been a while, she continued carefully. But Mom hasn't been feeling well. She keeps asking about you. I leaned against the kitchen counter. What's wrong with her? Nothing serious, Victoria said quickly. Just stress. You know how she is. Her tone softened. She misses you, Ingrid. We all do. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I asked the only question that mattered. Did she tell you to call me? Victoria hesitated. Not exactly. The silence said everything. Victoria, I said calmly, why are you really calling? Another pause. Then she finally said it. We saw the article about your new job. There it was. The real reason. Not concern. Not regret. Public recognition. My success had become visible. And suddenly my family wanted me back in the picture. Befreundet. That night I called Rachel. Is Mom actually sick? I asked. Rachel laughed softly. She was at the spa yesterday. Posted a selfie in the eucalyptus steam room. I closed my eyes. So this is about the article. Yes, Rachel replied. They're not reaching out because they miss you. They're reaching out because now you're important. Her honesty didn't hurt. It simply confirmed what I already suspected. DSG. Over the next few weeks the attempts continued. Emails. Calls. Even a handwritten note from my mother inviting me to lunch. Each message sounded carefully polite. Each one avoided the same subject. The message that had started everything. Finally one evening I sat at the kitchen table staring at my phone while Marcus washed dishes nearby. You're quiet tonight, he said. I sighed. Victoria called again. He dried his hands and leaned against the counter. And? They want me to come to dinner. Marcus studied my expression. What do you want to do? I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I asked a question that had been circling my mind for days. What if I'm wrong? Marcus raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? What if I've been too harsh? I said quietly. She's still my mother. What if I should at least hear her out? Marcus didn't respond right away. Instead, he walked into the office and returned with his laptop. Come here, he said. He opened a folder. The name caught my attention immediately. Ingrid. Do not delete. Inside were dozens of saved files. Screenshots. Messages. Photos Rachel had forwarded over the years. Marcus turned the screen toward me. The first image was the WhatsApp message from my mother. The one Rachel sent me 4 years ago. Ingrid chose to be a lowly teacher. I no longer see her as my daughter. The timestamp glowed in the corner. May 9th, 2020. Marcus opened another file. My mother's recent email. My dearest Ingrid. No apology. No explanation. Then he opened a third image. A family photo from Thanksgiving 2020. Everyone sitting around the table. The caption read, Mom, you raised us right. I stared at the screen. I saved everything, Marcus said quietly.
Every message Rachel forwarded.
Every photo that showed up online.
Hey, met my eyes.
I knew there might come a day when you'd start wondering if you imagined all of it. My chest tightened. You didn't imagine it, he continued gently. You survived it. The room fell silent. For years I had been carrying those memories alone. But Marcus had been keeping the evidence safe, waiting for the moment I needed to see it again. You don't owe them forgiveness, he said softly.
You only owe yourself the truth. Lehre ein.
Later that evening, Rachel sent one more screenshot. This one was new.
It came from the family group chat.
The one I had been removed from.
My mother's message read: Wonderful news.
Ingrid is being honored at the State Teacher of the Year ceremony next month. It will be televised. I've confirmed our attendance. We'll arrive early and sit in the family section. This is a great opportunity to show everyone the Fairbanks family stands together. Victoria replied, Already picked out my dress. Bradley added,
Good PR opportunity.
I read the messages slowly. No one had asked if they were welcome. No one had apologized. They had simply decided to appear. To step into my moment. And pretend they had supported me all along. Marcus looked at me. What are you going to do? For a long moment, I said nothing. Then I smiled slightly. I'm going to let them come.
Rachel blinked on the video call.
You are? Yes.
Marcus leaned forward.
And then? I looked at the screenshot one last time. Then I closed my phone. And then I'm going to tell the truth. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to rewrite history. But what none of us expected was how that ceremony would actually unfold. Because the moment my mother stood up during my speech,
everything changed.
The Virginia State Teacher of the Year ceremony took place on a warm evening in May. The event was held inside a large auditorium at the Richmond Convention Center, a place usually reserved for conferences and political events. That night it was filled with teachers. Hundreds of them. Some were finalists like me, others were administrators, school board members, and families who had come to celebrate the educators who had shaped their lives. Marcus sat in the audience with Lily beside him. She wore a small yellow dress and had insisted on braiding her hair the way she thought important people looked. When she saw me backstage earlier, she wrapped her arms around my waist and whispered something that almost made me cry. You're the best teacher in the whole world. I kissed the top of her head.
Thank you, sweetheart.
But even as the ceremony began, part of my mind was somewhere else. Because I knew something the organizers didn't. My family was coming.
Reich.
Rachel had texted me earlier that afternoon. They're definitely going. Mom bought a new dress. Victoria is bringing her husband. Bradley said it's a big networking opportunity.
Networking. The word made me laugh when I read it.
Somehow, my moment had already been turned into something useful for them. But I had decided days earlier that I wasn't going to stop them. In fact, I wanted them there. Because the truth is stronger when people hear it for themselves.
Erzähl jetzt zurecht. 6 Es zählen Lieden.
The ceremony began with speeches from the education board. They spoke about dedication, community, and the future of schools in Virginia. Then the awards started. District by district, teachers walked onto the stage to receive recognition for their work. Some cried. Some laughed nervously. Some gave short speeches about their students. Each one deserved the applause they received. Teaching is a profession that rarely receives public praise. So moments like this mattered. Eventually, the host stepped back to the podium and said the words I had been waiting for.
And now we come to the final award of the evening.
The room quieted immediately.
Virginia State Teacher of the Year.
My heart began beating faster. The host smiled. This year's award goes to an educator whose dedication has changed the lives of countless students. He paused for dramatic effect.
Please welcome Ingrid Fairbanks Webb.
The applause started instantly.
Marcus stood up first.
Lily clapped so hard her small hands made a sharp echo in the auditorium. I walked onto the stage slowly, trying to stay calm. But as I stepped toward the microphone, my eyes moved across the audience. And that's when I saw them. 3 rows from the front. My mother.
Victoria. Bradley.
All dressed perfectly.
All smiling proudly.
As if they had always supported me.
Es gibt.
For a moment, I simply stood there.
The applause slowly faded.
The host handed me the award plaque. Then he stepped aside so I could speak. I adjusted the microphone. The auditorium waited. Thank you, I began. My name is Ingrid Fairbanks Webb, and I've been a teacher for 11 years. I paused briefly. People often ask why someone chooses this profession. I looked out across the crowd of educators. For me, the answer is simple. Because sometimes the person who believes in a child is the only person they have. The audience nodded quietly. Teachers understood that feeling. Over the years, I've had students who struggled with reading, math, confidence, and sometimes even basic hope. But every one of them deserved someone who refused to give up on them. Applause rippled gently across the room. I continued. But teaching has also taught me something about family. My eyes moved again toward the 3rd row. My mother sat perfectly straight in her chair, smiling like a proud parent. Victoria leaned toward someone beside her, whispering something. Bradley had already taken out his phone, probably recording the moment. For some people, I said slowly, family is the place where they first learn encouragement. For others, it's the place where they first learn resilience.
The room grew quieter.
People leaned forward slightly. When I chose to become a teacher, not everyone supported that decision. I heard someone shift in their seat. In fact, 4 years ago, my own family decided they no longer wanted to be associated with me because of it. The room went completely still. 300 people listening. My mother's smile vanished instantly. Victoria's head snapped upward. Bradley lowered his phone. I continued calmly. They believed teaching wasn't successful enough. They believed it didn't reflect well on them. But something interesting happened after that. I glanced toward Marcus and Lily. I built a new family. A family that values kindness more than status. A family that measures success by the number of lives you help, not the number of luxury brands you wear. The applause began softly, then grew stronger. Not everyone knew the full story, but they understood the meaning behind it.
Andong.
And then something unexpected happened. My mother stood up, right there in the middle of the ceremony. She raised her hand slightly. "Ingrid," she called loudly. The sound echoed across the room. Several people turned toward her. She stepped into the aisle. Her voice carried the same tone she had used my entire childhood. The tone of someone correcting a mistake. "That's enough," she said firmly. "We don't need to discuss private family matters here." Gasps rippled through the audience. My heart pounded in my chest. But I didn't step away from the microphone. Instead, I smiled gently. "Actually," I replied, "I think this is exactly the place to discuss it." The entire auditorium fell silent again.
My mother froze halfway down the aisle.
Because she had expected me to stop, to apologize, to step down quietly. But she didn't understand something. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of her.
Oi. Die fortzubereichen, die nervig dich gesund am jetzt zu wissen, die wo an neu zu wissen.
I reached into my folder on the podium and pulled out a single printed page. A screenshot. The same message Rachel had sent me 4 years earlier. I held it up. "This is a message my mother wrote in a family group chat," I said.
The large projector screen behind me lit up,
displaying the words for everyone to see. Ingrid chose to be a lowly teacher. I no longer see her as my daughter. A wave of shocked murmurs moved through the room. My mother's face turned pale. Victoria whispered something urgently to Bradley. But no one could erase the message now, because the truth had already been shown. And what happened next would decide whether my family finally faced it or walked away again. The auditorium was completely silent. Hundreds of people sat frozen in their seats, staring at the large projector screen behind me. The message my mother had written 4 years earlier filled the entire wall. Ingrid chose to be a lowly teacher. I no longer see her as my daughter. For a moment, no one spoke. My mother stood halfway down the aisle, her hands gripping the edge of her purse so tightly that her knuckles turned white. This was not the scene she had imagined. She had come expecting applause, recognition, a moment where she could stand proudly beside me while people congratulated her for raising such a successful daughter. Instead, the room was seeing something very different.
The truth.
Victoria leaned forward and whispered urgently in her ear. Bradley looked around the auditorium nervously, clearly realizing that hundreds of people were witnessing a family moment that could not be undone. But I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse anyone. I simply continued speaking. 4 years ago, I said calmly, I believed that message was the end of my story.
I let the words settle.
I thought losing my family meant losing everything. The audience listened carefully. Some of the teachers in the front rows had tears in their eyes. Because teachers understand something most people don't. They understand what it feels like to be underestimated. To be told their work doesn't matter. To be treated like their contribution is somehow smaller than others. And for a long time, I continued, I carried that pain with me. I looked toward the third row again. My mother had stopped walking. She stood perfectly still now. Then something surprising happened. I realized that being rejected for doing something meaningful is not actually a failure. It's freedom. A wave of quiet applause moved through the audience. I continued. When you stop trying to meet other people's expectations, you finally discover who you are meant to be.
Wenn's.
I turned slightly and gestured toward the front row.
My husband Marcus is here tonight.
Marcus stood, clearly uncomfortable with the sudden attention. And our daughter Lily. Lily waved shyly, hiding slightly behind Marcus's arm. They are the family that stood beside me when no one else did. More applause filled the auditorium. And every student I have ever taught is part of that family too. I paused for a moment. Because teaching isn't just a career. It's a promise. A promise that every child deserves someone who believes in them.
The applause grew louder now.
But the room still felt tense. Because everyone knew there was something else left unsaid. My mother slowly walked back to her seat. She sat down without speaking. For the first time in my life, she looked small. Not powerful. Not confident. Just human.
S.A.N.
I returned my attention to the microphone. Tonight isn't about proving anyone wrong, I said. It's about proving something much more important. I held up the award plaque the governor had handed me earlier. That the work teachers do matters. That patience matters. That kindness matters. And that the people who dedicate their lives to helping others should never be made to feel small for it. The audience erupted into applause again. Some people stood. Others wiped their eyes. But I still had one final thing to say. I looked toward the third row once more. And this time I spoke directly to my mother. 4 years ago you told everyone you no longer saw me as your daughter. The room went silent again.
I want you to know something.
I paused briefly. You were right about one thing. Her eyes widened slightly. I continued. I'm not the daughter you expected. I didn't become a doctor or a corporate lawyer. I didn't join the country club or collect designer handbags. I became a teacher. My voice softened. And I'm proud of that. The applause returned, louder than before. But this time I didn't continue the confrontation. Because the truth had already been spoken. There was nothing left to prove.
Die Börsenbau. Aber die Hotel dann.
The ceremony ended a few minutes later. Teachers surrounded me afterward, offering congratulations and hugs. Several parents approached to thank me for my work. One older man shook my hand and said quietly, "My third-grade teacher changed my life too." Moments like that meant more than any award ever could. Eventually the crowd began to thin. Marcus and Lily joined me near the stage. "You were amazing," Marcus said softly. Lily wrapped her arms around my waist. "I told you everyone would clap," she said proudly. I laughed and kissed the top of her head. Then I noticed someone standing near the edge of the auditorium. My mother. Victoria and Bradley had already left. But she remained there alone. For a moment, neither of us moved. Finally, she walked toward me. Slowly. Carefully. I didn't expect that. she said quietly. Her voice sounded different. Not angry. Not proud.
Just uncertain.
I know, I replied. She hesitated. Then she asked something I had never heard from her before.
Are you happy?
The question surprised me. For years she had only cared about success, status, appearances. But now she was asking something simpler. Yes, I said honestly. I am. She nodded slowly. Then she looked down at the award plaque in my hands. You worked hard for this. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was the closest thing she had ever offered. After a moment she added something else. I didn't understand what you were trying to do.
I studied hairface.
For the first time in decades, she wasn't performing for anyone. There were no country club friends watching. No audience to impress. Just two people standing in a quiet auditorium. I know, I said gently. Silence stretched between us. Finally, she spoke again. If you ever want to talk, she said awkwardly, I'm here. I didn't promise anything. Healing doesn't happen instantly. But I nodded.
That's a start. Und
later that night we drove home. Lily fell asleep in the back seat. Marcus reached over and squeezed my hand. You okay? He asked. I looked out the window at the dark highway stretching ahead. For years I had believed losing my family meant losing everything. But now I understood something very different. Sometimes the people who reject you create the space where your real life begins. Yes, I said softly. I'm more than okay. Because the girl my mother erased 4 years earlier had built something stronger than approval. She had built a life. And no one could take that away.